Let's move over to Auburn. Okay. This is a team that's really interesting because, again, they relied on the transfer portal last year, like I just previously mentioned. And now they kind of do it again, but now it feels like the transfer portal was more, some of these were luxury gets, you know. They're doing well on the recruiting trail. I think Hugh Freeze, he's got a defensive staff, I think, in there now that he really likes. The schedule you before have mentioned to me off air is pretty manageable. And this Auburn team is an interesting team to look at, and you were very high on them last year. Um, Probably for a lot of the similar reasons that I have a feeling that you're going to be high on them again this year. All right, but maybe you were a year early.
Well, not a year early. They should have went over. Okay, you can't get blown out by New Mexico State. I'm sorry, and let me preface that. That's it. I'm done talking about last year. We're moving on to 2024. I have forgiven you guys. It's okay. All right, Hugh Freeze. It's over. The only thing that does concern me before we get into the actual players here is your coaching staff. Now, I do think Hugh Freeze, I think they made a couple changes. I think he feels better about the staff than last year's. But DJ Jerkin is a guy that I'll just say it. I'm gonna speak for you as well. We're not very high on. We are
Nope.
not very high on. When that happened, I was Auburn was killing it recruiting wise. They were crushing it. I was like, they're about to have a great offseason and project themselves into the top half, well into the top half of the SEC for years to come. And you hire DJ Durkin. And I don't know how he keeps getting jobs. I don't see it. I have never seen it
Charles
with
Kelly,
him.
though, Charles Kelly is the real deal, I think.
Yes. Oh, yes. That's a great hire as well. But
Especially in the recruiting aspect. DJ Durkin, yeah, I have my thoughts. Let's just say there was like a period in there where Mike Elko was hired, and it was like, is he going to retain DJ Durkin? And I'm praying that DJ Durkin, and then he goes over and gets hired by Auburn, and I'm like, well, thank you.
they, yeah, they,
You just
you
saved
just,
us.
you
You
helped
just
one of
saved
your
us.
rivals and you hurt yourself. But yeah,
Now, I mean,
I think
how good is Jay Bateman? I mean, we'll talk about that in the next
it's
episode.
another guy that keeps getting jobs. Okay. But anyways, though, with this Auburn team, I think everyone's looking at the quarterback position, right? Peyton Thorne. I mean, he was below average in 2023. Okay. He was stinky. He was not very good. And he hasn't really been good since 2021. Right. Last year, it was weird, though. I get it. You're coming over. I believe it was like a summer enrollee. It was weird. You split time with Robbie Ashford. You never really had the job won, and he just didn't have a good year. And he didn't have the weapons, even though Hugh Freeze was just in his bag against Alabama. It was incredible. That was one of the single handedly greatest coaching performances I have ever seen. And you still lost that game
Somehow. Oh my
somehow.
gosh.
Regardless, though, like I said,
Unbelievable.
we're on to 2024. And I do think I expect Peyton Thorne to take a little bit more of a step, right? How much is it going to be? I'm not expecting that much, right? But I do think he's going to be better than last year, right? You saw what he did at Michigan State when he had good weapons. Keon Coleman, Jaden Reed, among other, like you had NFL players around him, and he played well. Not Kenneth Murray, Kenneth Walker. You had right? Really good pieces around him, and he performed well. To me, you have a similar staff, a similar situation, not necessarily to that magnitude where you've got, a potential Heisman guy running back. You've got Keon Coleman, freak, Jaden Reed lit the
You got a
NFL up
really good
as
running
you.
back, though. You have a first team preseason All SEC running back.
And listen, well, we'll get to him, but I'm just saying, like, to expect him to be the impact that Kenneth Walker. I mean, Kenneth Walker left
Yeah.
Michigan State, and they're still looking for a running back, right? Like he was that
Yeah.
kind of good, and he made up for that O line, regardless.
Jalen
So
Berger to UCLA.
so, okay, whatever. Peyton Thorne, I do like him. Is mobile. He low key can move. I mean, you saw him. And that Georgia run was great. We talked about that last year. I didn't think he had it in him, and that was kind of
The,
cool.
the best play of the entire year.
It was great. All of a sudden, it's whoa, okay. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you think from what are your expectations? I mean, he was 16 for 10. I'm sorry, 16 touchdowns, 10 interceptions last year. What to you is like, okay, this Auburn team hits their over if Peyton Thorne throw this touchdown interception ratio, or like what do you expect? If he goes 16 for 10 again, are they going to hit their over?
I think 16 and 10. I think they could hit their over if he goes 16 and 10. I think they will exceed expectations. If he goes something like 23 and 8, then I think you're talking
Oh,
about, whoa, like, holy cow. Auburn, wait, they're heading into the Iron Bowl with the chance to, you know,
dare I say 9-1? Oh no, that's crazy.
nah,
But
yeah, but that
no,
whole,
no. I
well,
can't
maybe
say
I do. We'll get to
it's
the
George.
schedule. We'll
Yeah,
get to
yeah,
the
we'll get to
schedule.
it. But like you mentioned, Jarquez Hunter, right? Let's hear about him a little bit.
Okay, well, he ran for 900 yards last year. Okay, on 160 attempts, he averaged like 5.7 yards per carry, which is exceptional, by the way, in the SEC, especially with that offensive line. That is exceptional. Part of that was Hugh Freeze, though, right? I mean, you can have a bad offensive line and still scheme your running game, which credit Hugh Freeze there, and that coaching staff. So,
And
I
they
will
didn't
say
have a
that,
passing game threat either to go with it. It was
yeah, no, it's Jarquez Hunter, and that's why he's first team All SEC. I think there may be some other running backs in the SEC that are possibly better than him, but I'm not going to argue it. It's preseason All SEC media days. Who cares? Two people voted for Vanderbilt at SEC media days to win the conference, so it's clearly a joke to some people, this voting thing. So I'm not going to take too much stock into it, but Jarquez Hunter is really good. My question is, um, how do we feel about the rest of this running back room? I mean, you have some guys with carries in this Auburn staff. I mean, I'm looking at Alston and Cobb. I mean, they have carries.
yeah. I mean, I don't hate them at all. I mean, Alston put up over almost. He averaged 5 yards per carry last year on over 60 touches. That's a pretty good sample size. Cobb's a guy also averaged over 5 yards per carry, over 33 rushing attempts. I mean, I do want to say real quick mention to Brian Battier. Thoughts and prayers with him. Hopefully he's
Of
all right. I know
course.
it's really scary accident there. And hope everything's all right. But I know it's a scary situation for Auburn and his family as well. So but yeah, he was a really special player in that running back room. But yeah. I mean, Hunter, he can't do it all, right? And he only had 160 carries last year, which I guess I say only. He that's not a ton. When Peyton Thorne had 130, I mean, you had 500 rushing attempts that year, and Hunter only had what, a fourth of them. So I think there's going to be other options in that room, and Austin and Cobb can, be guys.
So and then you mentioned a little bit in terms of receivers. I mean, I'm looking at this receiving core and I'm like, this is an all right receiving room. Okay. I mean, I look at a guy like Robert Lewis from Georgia State, who was uber productive. We've seen productive transfers from Georgia State, transfer to the Power Five level and be very good, aka I'm forgetting his name. Unbelievable. Went to Louisville. Help me out, CD. Life
Oh,
raft.
Jamari Thrash,
Jamar Thrash. Gosh. All
that's
right,
your
awesome. Thank
guy.
you. That is my guy. I was here before everyone else was with him. Keandre Lambert Smith, right over coming over from Penn State, who was the best receiver on that team last year. Am I wrong in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, I think he did disappoint, right? But I do think he
But he
was,
was
yeah,
he was
he
your better
was.
receiver on that team, right?
Yeah,
And look,
definitely.
Keandre Lambert Smith doesn't need to have 1,000 yards. Like none of these guys need to have 1,000 yards for this team to have a productive receiving room. I think Hugh Freeze is going to try to spread the ball around. I mean, you got Cam Coleman, which, I mean, nuts, nuclear already as a true freshman. He's going to be bonkers. Perry Thompson is another true freshman, um, who was like top 50 recruit in the country. I mean, 6'3", 205, ran 10.94 in the 100-yard dash his sophomore year in high school. So, I mean, just Caleb Burton, who had 200 yards last year in this offense, who's only a redshirt sophomore. I think there's some guys there. Sam Jackson coming from, remember that guy? Remember Sam Jackson?
Holy
He's
cow!
there.
Yeah, former
He's at Auburn
high
now.
level. He was a high level quarterback recruit. I mean, really athlete quarterback. Unbelievable athlete. I mean, and by the way, they played Auburn this year, and they're gonna play him again, right? I believe in Jordan Hare, and I mean, watching him play quarterback is stressful, but he is a electrifying athlete. And it sounds like that transition is going a little bit better than they had thought. I mean, I don't know how much you can count on him this year, but that's pretty exciting to at least have some gadget guy raise the athlete level in that room. To me, the linchpin here is Cam Coleman, and I know he's going to get talked about a ton, but the beauty of bringing in Lambert Smith and Robert Lewis, having Caleb Burton return, is you've got veteran guys that have played there, or at least guys that you trust, right? And has production in college football. And Cam Coleman doesn't have to be, his 5-star A game alpha wide receiver every single week. Now, I think he has the potential to be absolutely, but the reality is true freshman. There's going to be growing pains, and to me, I think there's going to be games where he struggles. But that's where you've got Smith. That's where you've got Lewis. That's where you've got even your tight end Rivaldo Fairweather, to also just help him out a little bit. But I do still continue to be super high on Cam Coleman. I mean, if it wasn't for Jeremiah Smith being just unbelievable, Cam Coleman would be talked about a lot more. And I think he will be this year as he does some really nice things for Auburn.
Yeah,
But by
I
the way,
mean,
let's talk real quick. When's the last time Auburn had a guy like that? I mean, Sammy Coates, right? I mean, it's it's. I mean, Seth Williams was a high recruit and he is physical receiver, but Cam Coleman is a different level of athlete than that is. This is game breaking for Hugh Freeze and the staff for years to come.
well, let's talk about, I guess Derek Nix is being brought in there to be the offensive coordinator and the running backs coach for Auburn. Uh, I don't think he has any. I don't know if Hugh Freeze is calling the plays, to be honest. I probably should know. I don't think Nix ever is called plays. He was at Ole Miss and he was a running backs coach and then a wide receivers coach like these last couple years. And yeah, he was there for 16 years, by the way. Isn't that crazy? When was the last time you heard a college coach was at a school for 10 years, let alone 16 years? Right. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I trust Hugh Freeze on kind of hire there to bring in new ideas on that offense, but we'll see how the Derek Nix hire turns out. I trust Hugh Freeze, right? This is Hugh Freeze's offense, right? This isn't Derek Nix's offense, right? I don't think he's bringing in Derek Nix um to innovate his offense and make it, something that it wasn't previously already. But I think we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Can't wait to hear players. I guess Derek Nix, recruiting wise, I'm sure will help a little bit. I mean, he was already one of the top recruiters in the SEC, given the resources that he has at Ole Miss, specifically recruiting those positional players. If I had to guess, probably going to have a big deal to do with some of these. Auburn, do you expect them to finish with the top 15 class this year? Top 20 for sure.
It wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, they're gonna close guys. They're gonna flip guys. I mean, they
I
always
would
do a
think
good job. Hugh Freeze always does a good job.
I think Derek Nix will have a lot to do with that, right? So,
Yeah.
but anyways, let's go to the offensive line. You bring in a transfer, Percy Lewis, over from Mississippi State, who, I don't hate. SEC experience, pretty solid. Dylan Wade, who you brought over from Tulsa, I believe last year, around this time. Is he gonna slide over there to guard?
Dylan White, yeah, that's what it sounds like here. He played left tackle last year, struggled.
Yeah.
And they bring in Percy Lewis to have competition there. It sounds like they feel comfortable having Lewis start at tackle and wait inside.
Yeah, and Connor Lewis is a true freshman last year. I thought wasn't bad at center. So I think the bigger question is your tackles. Like, is Percy Lewis gonna kind of take another step at left tackle? Is Xavier Miller not gonna suck nuts at right tackle? That
I
that's
couldn't tell you
that
that. I
I can't
To
tell you
me,
that.
like just the history of, what is college football development of 18 to 22-year-old kids. To me, I feel like he's going to get a little bit better. How much that remains to be seen. I do think it's going to help not having another like Dylan Wade was also terrible. I think Lewis at least gives you some kind of floor to have, and Wade, Lou, and Wright are pretty good on the interior to give you help. You're gonna have to scheme around that potentially, but the reality is, hiding one offensive lineman a lot easier than hiding three offensive linemen, and that was sometimes the case last year for Auburn. Missing out on some G5 offensive linemen that you were hoping, would be really good. But yeah,
So are you expecting marginal, mild, or major improvement on this
I would
offensive line?
go on the low side of mild. On the offensive line, yeah, the low side of
Okay.
mild. I think Peyton Thorne being a year more in the system and being more comfortable getting the ball out on time, that will have an effect. I think Hunter will continue on the football, but even like you're not going to be able to just like go, cover zero and just, man up Auburn's wide receivers this year like you could have last year. This year, you have guys that can beat one-on-one coverage, and you can't just blitz the crap out of them, and they can't do anything about it. Um, I think it also just helps that sense as well. You know, college football, the beauty of football in general is like it's complementary, right? So you've got other pieces of your offense that are getting better. It's also going to help your offensive line.
Absolutely. Let's move over to the defensive side of the ball, which they were they were pretty good last year, honestly. Like from what I thought they were going to be, I think they performed in the big moments. They got the stops they needed to on third down, especially. They were 17th in the country on third down percentage, which is a big deal. That is the difference between like that is such a big difference, like stopping those drives early and getting teams off the field. It's so massive because like I'm looking at like metrically, yeah, sure, their run defense wasn't spectacular. Their pass defense itself was pretty good. Getting off the field on third down, so big for them last year. Is it replicable? I don't know. I really don't know. And we'll see with DJ Durkin. Not a guy known for necessarily getting his team off the field on third down, particularly. So I wouldn't imagine that they improve in that category. Defensively, you lose DJ James, you lose, I believe Marcus Harris is gone, and also Jalen Simpson. I mean, that's like
Pritchett,
1,600 snaps. Pritchett, yeah, that's like 2,000 snaps that you lose there on defense, which it's not as much as some other defenses, but surely not something to just ponder or not just wave over, right? Let's go to the defensive line. I don't hate the defensive line.
no. And to
I
me,
don't
it's a
hate it.
nice blend of returning veteran talent and some frisky younger guys, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and a nice transfer.
Isaiah
Please go
Rakes
for it.
is a good one tech. All right. He's pretty good. I think it's a guy that Texas A&M is very deep along the defensive line, and they're kind of relying on someone to kind of step up in that one tech spot that Isaiah Rakes did a good job of when McKinley Jackson wasn't playing there. I think he's pretty solid. Philip Bliddy from Texas Tech, Indiana, formerly. I thought he was okay last year in that three tech role, you know, but we'll see if he can actually take another improvement. Um,
Two guys I like in that interior room is Trill Carter and Gage Keys. Those are two guys, and I've got a little bias there. They're both formerly from Minnesota. Previous stops they were at Texas and Kansas. Texas was Trill Carter, Kansas was Gage Keys. Keys is a pretty good athlete, and those both guys were bared at Minnesota, believe it or not, and they just couldn't get on the field. Keys did some nice things in a couple years for Kansas, or I guess a year at Kansas, and then Trill Carter as well was
yep.
just, I mean, in an unbelievable room at Texas as well. Trill Carter did some nice things at Minnesota back to in 2022 and more so 2021 in a more limited role. The thing is, like I said, I think there's just other bodies in the room which also helps him as well. So if it doesn't have to be that guy that's getting, almost 500 snaps like Marcus Harris did last year, I don't know if I love that in the SEC, but I think Trill Carter, I mean, he's been in the college weight room forever now. I think him in 250, 300 snaps, I really like that.
The guy that I'm really excited about, Kieran Crawford from Arkansas State.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Uber
We
productive there in the Sun Belt. And we know that the Sun Belt was, I don't know, the sixth best conference in football last year. Better than the American, better than the Mountain West. We'll say it. We'll say it on the
yeah.
show that the Sun Belt was the best G5 conference last year. Yeah, and that was a defense that relied on him getting to the quarterback for sure. He was really good. We'll see what kind of pass rushing role he kind of takes over there. Is he going to say that take that same role as like Jalen McLeod, or is he going to play? Um, more five tech with like Keldrick Falk. I don't know. I don't know what he's gonna do exactly, but I would imagine that he's probably gonna rotate in there with Jalen McLeod. So who was really good last year, I
Yeah,
think.
McLeod was great and coming from the Sun Belt as well. I think he can take another jump. You mentioned Kendrick Falk as a true freshman, yeah, true freshman last year. He played well. And then, the icing on the cake is year two highly recruited freshmen that you brought in, Amaris Williams and DeMonta
Hmm.
Walker. Both guys, 4-star, love their potential. They could play in year one for sure. Do they need to is the question. I think that's what you really want. You would like for Falk, Crawford, McLeod to be enough, right? But the reality is you're going to have depth, you're going to have attrition. And it'd be nice to have one of, if not both, Williams and Walker to come in and be ready to play and contribute meaningful snaps in the SEC.
So I like the D line, right? Not saying I love it. I like the D line. The linebacker room. Bring in Dorian Mousy Jr. from Duke,
Yep.
who was pretty good at. Is okay at Duke, right? He was okay. You have Eugene Asante, who's back again for them at linebacker. Um, Trying to pull up how many snaps he had last year. 491 snaps. Um, Pretty good. I don't know. I have a lot of questions about that linebacker room. It clearly was a need for them. Uh, Going to get Mousy and Gate in the portal. So I don't know. What do you think about this linebacking core? I'm not super high on it, to be honest.
I kind of like it. You
Okay.
mentioned Asante. Anytime I watched Auburn, I thought he popped. I thought he was kind of all over the field. I mean, obviously he had 86 tackles, right? I mean, of course he's going to be making plays, but Austin Keys, he had 30 tackles last year. Um, he wasn't terrible, almost 300 snaps as well. He graded out nicely. You mentioned Dorian Mousy from Duke, who had 60 plus tackles there. Uh, but the X factor again, I mean, I'm not going to compare him to a guy like Suntrain Perkins, obviously, and definitely not um, Harold Perkins over LSU. But I mean, we've seen true freshman linebackers that are athletic come in and make plays in the SEC, right? And they can find ways to scheme up. DJ Durkin, Charles Kelly, those guys can do some fun things with him. I wonder how ready he is to play in a similar vein. Come on, come on. I said they can. I said they can. The potential is there. DeMarcus, I mean, they hired Durkin for a reason, right? I mean, let's hope he can figure it out.
Well, look,
DeMarcus ready.
if you want high upside athletic linebacker recruits, I know a guy by the name of DJ Durkin who is very prone to losing said recruits to last
And
second flips.
and also leaving a guy with potential and athleticism who's going to build his way into a second round pick off the field in Edge Cooper. Okay, enough of the DJ Durkin hate. More on DeMarcus Riddick. I don't know. I think in a similar vein as Williams and Walker, do you need him to play year one? You hope not, right?
You
But
probably
this
do
was a
though.
but you might, and my point is you would love for him to be ready to play and contribute in a certain niche little role. Yeah,
All right, well, let me ask you about the secondary then. What are your thoughts on the secondary, which performed pretty well last year, but you're losing some pieces there.
yeah. You're losing DJ James. We mentioned him earlier. Nehemiah Pritchett, both your starters last year. What's nice about getting Keontae Scott back? He was a guy I liked a lot. He kind of did a lot for you last year,
Agreed.
mostly in the slot. Almost 300 snaps in the slot. So that's nice to have him back. But Kalen Lee was pretty good last year. He's got to step into a larger role. How much can Antonio Kite help you coming over from Alabama? Drake Crawford, he's a true freshman that's had early positive reviews again in that loaded class. We talked about at every level of this defense, and I guess with Cam Coleman offensively. Does he have to play year one? Hopefully not, right? But can he play year one? How much does it give you? I think it's all gravy. And I think that would be, if you talk about why are reasons that Auburn hits their ceiling this year, yeah, among other things, it's part of this freshman class comes in and gives them substantial, significant effort and production, right? JC Hart, Tyler Scott, those are two guys in depth. of that cornerback spot. I don't know. I listen, it's never good to lose two starting good productive cornerbacks, but there's some talent there that you feel somewhat optimistic about not taking too big of a step back.
Yeah. I guess I'm just kind of PTSD from the Durkin secondary last year at A&M, but I don't know. We'll see. I think there are pieces on this defense. I give it a huge downtick because of coaching, and people are going to disagree with our DJ Durkin hate, but I like if you look at Texas A&M stats from last year. All right, let's go over to it. In the second half of games, they were horrendous. They were horrendous.
Yeah.
The run game was really good because of one player. His name was McKinley Jackson. Okay. And Torian York and Edge Cooper at
Edge
linebacker,
Coop,
right?
yeah.
But that secondary was really bad. And you brought in a lot of secondary or a lot of quote unquote talent in the transfer portal, and it just didn't pan out. It did not pan out at all. None of them, not a single one of those players, not Tony Grimes, not Sam McCall, not Josh DeBerry, really, even though he played for you. Like none of those guys panned out at all. And
No.
that could be a talent thing. It could be a player thing, but I'm a little bit skeptical of the hiring of DJ Durkin for Auburn. But I do like Charles
No.
Kelly though, so I think that
Yeah,
that
and
saves some
he's a
of it for me.
secondary guy. He's been, I mean, at Florida State, Tennessee, Georgia Tech. I mean, he's been pretty good in that secondary, in most of the spots he's been. I mean, Colorado struggled last year, but hey, Travis Hunter was pretty damn good, right? I know Deion Sanders helped a little bit in
Shiloh
that
Sanders
cornerback
was
room,
also
but
pretty decent. I mean, despite
Shiloh
what people
Sanders,
want to
yeah,
say about Sanders kids, I mean he was pretty good last year.
yeah. Safety. I mean, speaking of safeties, right? Jaron Thompson comes over from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
They'd like to have him play. I know that. I know I think he kind of got beat out last year by a younger kid, but that's not an indicative on him, right? It's just the upside quite maybe not quite there with him. Caleb Wooden did some nice things last year. You're hoping that he gets better. But I think you're right, Simpson and Puckett, and those are guys that were pretty darn good for you last year, and they're gone, right? And Kaufman too. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a lot of overhaul in this defensive back and the depth. The worry thing is maybe you feel good about Thompson and Wooden, but behind them, like when Robinson, he's a JUCO kid. Terrence Love, right? He's a young guy. I mean, or not super experienced guy. Sylvester Smith, he's a guy that's redshirt freshman. I mean, how much do you want to rely on those guys to give you quality depth? That could be the undoing of this team defensively.
So let's go to their schedule then. Their over and win total's at 7.5, by the way. Increased by one from last year, which was at 6.5. They host Alabama A&M at home, week one. Then they host Cal at home, and they get New Mexico at home, then Arkansas at home, and then Oklahoma at home. They start the year with 5 home games, and then they go to Georgia, okay, which is tough. And then you have a bye week after that. Then you go to Missouri and then to Kentucky. So it's kind of interesting. You play in Jordan Hare your first 5 weeks of the season, but then you don't play in Jordan Hare, okay, which in the entire month of October, you don't play in Jordan Hare, which is crazy. So schedule dynamic wise, you're like, okay, some of these, you like the home stretch that you get 5 games in a row, but then you're also talking about you don't get to play in Jordan Hare for an entire month. So then after the Kentucky game, October 26th, then you play Vanderbilt at home. Then you have a bye. Then you play Louisiana Monroe, who is absolute booty, no pun intended. Then Texas A&M at home, and then Alabama on the road in the Iron Bowl. Uh, Wins that I think I like them in, right? Alabama A&M, Cal, New Mexico, Arkansas at home, Vanderbilt at home, ULM, and I actually like them to win that Texas A&M game, that week 13 game.
Yeah, no, I listen, them at home, it's a different kind of animal. It really, really is. And obviously, I got to give a shout out to our guy, Bronco Mendenhall at New Mexico. That's not going to be an easy win, or even year one there. No, it
Ooh.
probably will be, but the reality is, yeah, I mean, to me, there's a
Hey, Derek Hill's at Vanderbilt now.
yeah, oh yeah,
Sneaky,
that's true. Which
sneaky.
New Mexico's flashbacks, right, coming back into Jordan Hare. But the reality is, to get that over 7.5 wins, right? So you're looking at 8-4, right? You're gonna have to win some tough road games at Kentucky, at Missouri. You're gonna have to win one of those games potentially, and or I guess you just sweep everyone at home, which to me I don't quite see him with Oklahoma and Texas A&M. I don't think I feel good saying you're gonna win both those games. And if you're winning both those games, you'd probably steal another one from Kentucky, Missouri, or whatnot, and you could be looking at a pretty darn good season. I like the over here. I do. I just think the floor of this team is pretty high. And I'm looking at, teams that could potentially, I mean, Kentucky, I think that's a game I think they could absolutely win, even though I like Brock Vandegrift and what they're doing over there with Mark Stoops. But it's more about a cluster of games that you only have to win one or two, right? And but those are games that you can compete with, and there's probably four of them on your schedule. Other than Georgia and Alabama, I think you're going to be still going to have a talent disadvantage in that game. But everyone else is absolutely beatable. And to me, 7-5, I think you could absolutely get to 8-4.
Yeah, I struggle with this, to be honest. I I want to take this over, but in my head, when I do the math, I think I think the most likely outcome. You know what? Screw it. I'm taking the over. I'll ride with you. I think the most likely outcome is 8-4.
You got to go 2-2 against A&M, Missouri, Kentucky, and Oklahoma, and that's also with beating Arkansas and Cal. I guess you could throw them in there, but you should definitely win those games. I don't know. To me, if you're asking, let me ask you actually. They hit the over, right? Question marks on this team. You know, quarterback, O line, secondary. Those things have to be worked out, or can you win 8 games with maybe a leaky position group here or there?
Oh yeah, you can absolutely win without if your quarterback play is similar to what it was last year. I still think you can win 8 games. They almost did it last year. Like they were a
Yeah,
New
I guess
Mexico
they were.
State blowout away, and then one play away from winning 8 games last year. I think the talent is good enough on this defense. Asante, Blitty, Isaiah Rakes, um, and others. I think the talent is good enough on defense to make plays and make stops. Oh, DJ Durkin just gives me such a downgrade on that defense. It's crazy. Like the bias. I'm sorry, guys. I have an insane bias against DJ Durkin. It's crazy. But offensively, they have to improve, right? There's just no way they don't improve in the
Yeah.
system, right? Like, and let's say Peyton Wilson goes or Peyton Thorne goes down, right? Like, are you getting that much of a downgrade at quarterback? You are getting a downgrade at quarterback, but is it that much? Do you know for a fact is Hank Brown, Walker White even as a true freshman? Like, are those really that like I don't know. Like Peyton Thorne, when I watched him last year, I know 16-10, right? It's better than even some quarterbacks at the Power Five level. But man, was it an ugly 16-10? Like I really did not like the way he played last year. It was crazy. Uh so if people are gonna be like, oh, Peyton Thorne's way better than those guys you just mentioned, those bozos, I'm like, yeah, maybe, but I don't think by much. So I like the safety blanket of not being that concerned if your quarterback goes down, which not a lot of teams in the SEC can say.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And the only thing I think you lose is probably the legs that Thorne brings, that dual threat. Because Grenier and Brown, they're probably not, your athletes that I guess Thorne is, because he's got it in him, right? But yeah, I think that point's made. When you're taking overs, right, and we're not telling you about this, we're not betting this ourselves. Like that's things you have to think about too, where it's like wear and tear happens. Like worst case scenario, your quarterback goes down. What's going to happen then? And yeah, like you said, I don't hate this outlook on this team, even if Thorne goes down.